Normally, when we start a new camp, we go back into the background summary. But this time, since we have on 22nd summary session in Auroville, Savitri Bhavan, so we can start more or less from where we left. It'll save us time. Of course, we can go a little back, and that is to that point where Savitri has discovered her soul. We are on book 7, which has 7 cantos. The first canto is about Savitri experiencing human life. The divine becomes human. So it is a very interesting, charming canto where she identifies completely with our humanity, with its joy and grief and longings and all the issues, difficulties. And then in the very next canto, she is aware of the death which is just round the corner. And she asks that why my strength has been taken away from me. What shall I do? Because this is how we as human beings experience. So she must experience in fullness the entire identification with our humanity. And then she gets a command, and the command is very beautiful. And she is told that you have to walk and open the path for man. Man, human, walks in God's human steps. So she has to become like us, be like us, walk like us, but then as we go along with us, she opens doors after doors to the new creation, to the new discoveries. And the first discovery in that is the discovery of the soul. And repeatedly Sri Aurobindo says this is the first fundamental discovery of the yoga, without which all else, all kinds of experiences, all kinds of other things can be dangerous. So this is the first solid ground, first concordant between truth and life, as he puts it. First meeting of heaven and earth. The psychic is the mediator between the two. So once we discover it, we find this meeting ground, we discover as an individual, a first perfection. Because all our thoughts, all our feelings, they spontaneously and naturally flow towards the divine. We don't have to make an effort. The mind has to make an effort. Even a small thing like think positive, it's so much effort, and repeatedly how to think positive. So the remedy is bring out the soul. So simple. So if the soul steps out, spontaneously all the thoughts, immortal thoughts begin to rise within us. Feelings that normally earth does not know, a natural sweetness, a rhythm of love, beauty, harmony, the love for harmony, the instinct for harmony, all these become natural, which now we often rub off as no, it's not possible. With the coming out of the soul, it becomes not only possible, something very natural. As it is said very beautifully, it makes the nature turn towards the right and the light. Spontaneously the discrimination comes, and things which are not right, we don't have to read a book. That's why in Sri Aurobindo's yoga we don't have yamas and niyamas. Because yamas and niyamas are very mentalized thing. Whereas as the soul steps out, it shows us. Because there are countless things in life. Yama and niyama doesn't cover everything. There are new dilemmas which we are going to face as we advance and evolve. And yamas and niyamas belong to a different age of mankind. It doesn't tackle, for instance, cyber security and cyber thefts and bitcoins. It's no clue. So we have to meet these challenges. And we can't meet these challenges with just a yama and niyama. And yet we have to be in life. But if the soul steps out, then there is a spontaneous change. A change and an uplifting towards truth, towards beauty. And just a few lines we will read from that change which comes upon Savitri when her soul steps out from the mystic cavern in her heart. This is where she concentrates. Mystic cavern in the heart, and the process is she goes deep and deep and deep and doesn't stop. Plenty of things come on the way. which invite her, attract her, powers that rise to heaven and mate with hell, all these things she leaves behind. Mind planes which give her false certitudes, faith which says there is no need to go further. She doesn't stop. She goes pressing within till finally her soul steps out. She becomes one with the soul, the psychic being, and then, of course, fuses with the central being. And then we read on page 529. A glad uplift and a new working came. So everything is lifted up by the touch of the soul. It's the alchemist inside us. The immortal's thoughts displaced our bounded view. The immortal's thoughts, earth's drab idea and sense. All things now bore a deeper, heavenlier sense. The same things she is experiencing as all of us, but they bring a new meaning, a new vision, a new understanding, simply because this master craftsman has stepped out. A glad, clear harmony marked their truth's outline, reset the balance and measure of the world. We all live with false measures. Our measures are very simple. If somebody pleases my ego, he is a good person. And we take it right up to God. If God pleases my ego, he is the true God, one true God. And if it doesn't flatter my ego and says, you have a lot to do, oh my God, he is, or he sometimes shakes us a little bit to turn us to the right and the light, we say, oh, cruel torturer. So this is our bounded view. But to the view of the soul, what appears as a dreadful blow comes to it as a liberating hand of grace. That's how Sri Aurobindo puts in one of the aphorisms. O misfortune, blessed art thou, for through thee I have seen the face of my beloved. So misfortune becomes a blessing. But that is the soul's view, not the ego-bound view. And then a few lines below, the immortal's will took into its calm control our blind or erring government of life. A loose republic once of wants and needs, then bowed to the uncertain sovereign mind, life now obeyed to a diviner rule, and every act became an act of God. That means president's rule. So right now, the president is a good-for-nothing fellow. He sits sublime in his high office, and he has no choice but to actually sign. Of course, sometimes he can say that, no, please reconsider. But beyond that, he doesn't have really, yet he is the boss. So right now, the soul is like that. We all say, yes, there is the soul. But what rules us is a loose republic, with all the forces pulling in this direction, that direction, and sometimes we end up doing the sum resultant of the forces, as physics puts it. At that moment, whatever is strongest, we act according to that. But then, the president's rule with the soul, naturally, every act chimes with God's natural truth. So there is no question of anything going wrong. This is not a, it's not, it doesn't mean that, president rule is the best government. It's just an analogy. Sometimes a needed thing. So she undergoes this change. And naturally, on page 531, the mind is very happy, lifts a cry of victory. At last we have created heaven. Now if we see, there is a long journey to discover the soul. In fact, it is the most crucial part of the yoga. The rest of it is relatively simpler. It sounds very strange, but it is true that this is the most long journey, because one is so accustomed to the usual way of life, and once the soul steps out, it sensitizes everything to the absolute, towards the truth. So on page 531, O soul, my soul, we have created heaven. The mind is crying to the soul. Within we have found the kingdom here of God, his fortress built in a loud, ignorant world. And last three lines on this page. A first betrothal of the earth to heaven, a deep concordat between truth and life, a camp of God is pitched in human time. So, we have certain beautiful houses built amidst slums and waste and all this. And one can be very satisfied with it. Once I enter into my house, life is wonderful. But Savitri has not come for that. That is the first stage. We must open the door, know this place where we can enter, where we are free from the world of storms. But she has to create beauty everywhere. So very strangely, as she is happy with this new change, and this change is described very beautifully, what is the state of someone who is living in the soul? Now we come to the Canto 6 where we had stopped, Nirvana and the discovery of the all-negating absolute. On page 532 we have this bright perfection of her inner state poured, overflowing into her outward scene, made beautiful, dull, common, natural things, and action wonderful and time divine. Whatever she did was radiating with this beauty, pulsating with this sweetness, this love, this light which is in her heart began to flow all around her. This is the natural consequence of discovering the soul. Even the smallest, meanest work became a sweet or glad and glorious sacrament, an offering to the self of the great world, or a service to the one in each and all. That is how she becomes, every act becomes uplifting, a service, a instinct impregnated with love for the divine, and therefore it has a very different power, it has a different hue, it has a different effect. The same action, absolutely same, the smallest of action, lifting a glass of water and giving to someone, has a different power when it is done in a soul state and when it is done in a state of confusion. The same, absolutely same action. It's a question of the consciousness that has gone behind the act. And its closest example is, how, of course, it's a far off example, because what would happen in a soul state is something still deeper. But the same food, when the mother, one's own mother, makes it, and the same food cooked with the master chef of the world, the topmost master chef of the world in the best hotel. There is a difference. You are paying so much for it, you are sitting in the ambience of the best possible space and eating a food for which many would, envy, but ultimately mother's food is mother's food, which you have without the fan in your old time chaukas, kitchen. Now, of course, things have gone. Why? Because there is love in it. Now, mother's love is a fairly selfless love. So, it's not food she prepares a dish made out of love. All these things are there, But in a hotel, it's not prepared with love, it's commerce. So, the same thing changes its value because the consciousness is different. So, Sri Aurobindo is giving us this beautiful analogy that when we do the same thing in a soul state, it carries a different value. It's not that the person would know it. The person may not know it or notice it. And yet its value is different. And its effects are different. Sometimes people may say, खाना आपके घर खाया बहुत अच्छा लगा. They may not notice that it has been made as a prayer and an invocation to the divine, therefore it is prasad. Prasad is not necessarily made in the temple. It is a soul state in which things are prepared. Whereas in another place, everything is well done, but it doesn't carry that power, that sense. So here, everything she began to do was wonderful. A light invaded all from her being's light. Her heartbeats, dance, communicated bliss. So whoever came near her, in her company, began to feel that joy inside. Life can become so simple. Often people say, how to make life simple? This is the way to live by the soul. How to make life complicated? To live by the mind with all its analysis. How to do it, how not to do it, is this, is that. So it makes life complicated. Already it is very complicated. And information technology has made it even more complicated, because earlier it was very simple. The doctor gave medicine and I took it with trust. Now I am not happy. I take the prescription, talk to my doctor friend or my doctor brother, and he first says, no, that drug is better. Then I go on Google search, and Google search gives me 10 more options. So at the end, next time they come to the doctor and say, you know what, my brother has said this. So, sometimes all that I have to say is, I say, look, life is already complicated. I want to make it more complicated. Take from whichever doctor you have trust. That is the recommendation mother gave. Go to the doctor in whom you have trust. Simple. End of the story. But the mind will make it complicated. He is studied there. Oh, he is MD. He is double MD. He is from which place? This is the way mind complicates. So here, quite naturally, and look at these marvelous lines. Happiness grew happier, shared with her by her touch. And grief some solace found when she drew near. So, anyone who came near and communicated to her some joy suddenly went back as if happiness grew happier. Look at the marvel of Sri Aurobindo, because it takes a different touch, a different hue, a different quality. And it's not that she was doing something. Grief found some solace. There were people who went to her mother, of course, she has gone much beyond this, but they went to her with their sorrows. Even now we have the same experience. People often wonder, God is everywhere, why, only ashram? So of course there are many replies to it. I have one very simple reply for the pragmatic, practical mind. Yes, God is everywhere, but samadhi is here. So very simple answer. So what about samadhi? Try it. When you have a problem, try contacting God inside you and get the response. Vis-a-vis, go to the samadhi, tell it to Mother and Sri Aurobindo and see the response. So it's a very pragmatic reply. There are many other replies, of course, more philosophical, more metaphysical. But since the question is practical, the answer is very practical. So this is the beauty, that grief found, some solace found when she drew near. So this is the change which is going into her. But suddenly then something happens and she's invaded. She's living very safely in her quiet house, safe house. Suddenly one day, she is reminded of a mission. But paradoxically, the knock of darkness that is around. Imagine we are living in a forest, inhuman wild. And we are very happy because all the building is secure and the lamp is lit and everything is available. And one day some wild beast manages to come there from the backyard. Some gate is left open and knocks at the door. What will be the state? So she experiences that sudden fear invade from all around. A darkness formidable that has no shape but assumed any shape and comes knocking to her and says, oh, you have created perfection? You really believe it? You want to create heaven upon earth? I will not allow it. One day I am going to come and snatch this house of time away from you. What will you do then? I know you are living safe inside this house, but one day I will come. It's the cry of death, the cry of night. We should not read it. It is anyways crying from every quarter. All the TV channels cry of night. But we should read a little bit about the cry of light. So after she hears and she is filled with this unknown dread from all around, on page 536, we have these two lines. The voice of light after the voice of night. The cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply. A might of storm chased by the might of the sun. So what does this voice tell her? O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. This voice is almost inviting her. You want to take my challenge? Come on, come out. But she is not yet equipped. So she is told, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. Wait for some time. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues, and beat with thunderous knock upon thy gates. Hide, whilst thou canst, thy treasure of separate self behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till of a vaster empire it grows part. So wait till you have discovered this vast, the cosmic spirit which you will discover, the transcendent self. Don't rush into action. Don't rush into spreading this light because you have discovered it inside and you want to share it. Of course you should share it. It comes, the very next line is, but not for self alone, the self is one. But not now. She is asked to hold it back. And we see how mother held it back. And for how much time? She would come here, even in ashram, she would not mix much with people. People just looked, the early lot, that, oh, she is a great yogin. And she would do simple things, clean a room, sit on the floor, taught people how to sit before the master and sit quietly. Once, when Sri Aurobindo was doing these automatic writings at night, somebody asked him that we want to know about Mira Devi. And then she said, no, nothing about me. And Sri Aurobindo's pen dropped immediately. She didn't want to reveal anything. So Amrita once asked Sri Aurobindo, she is a great yogi, isn't it? Yes, she is great, very great indeed. Sri Aurobindo knew, he said she is born free. So Amrita says, but she doesn't give meditations. Says, yes, but one day, impelled by the divine love, she will step out. And that indeed will be a very great day. So for a long time, she doesn't disclose. People don't know what is inside her. When Sri Aurobindo would send somebody, go and meet the mother, go and meet that time Mira Devi, have you seen Mira? Then they would go and meet her, not knowing who she is. So she is hiding that kingdom. The time must come. She was waiting for the command. So we have this command given to her. And a few lines below. Except to be small and human on the earth, interrupting thy newborn divinity, that man may find his utter self in God. So she becomes human. Just like people don't know who she is. Some of them even took a bit, not offense, but Nalnida writes very interestingly that, we were all taken aback that there are some European yogis who are coming. So they were all revolutionaries. How can Europeans be yogis to start with? Then if they are yogis, why should they live among us? We don't realize those days one had to stay far away from divine beings. And okay, if they live amongst us, should we change our lifestyle or not? This was the question. So he says that we decided, why should we change our lifestyle for the sake of somebody who is coming from Europe? We will continue with our bohemian way of life. So, throwing the clothes, keeping things in their own way. They said, why should we change? And then later on he says, we didn't realize that it was the arrogant mind speaking. Nalnida writes that, she is Raj Rajeshwari Jagan Mata who is coming to live with you. But why should we change ourselves? So She has become human, small. She comes and mixes as if she is just one of these sadhikas. Not even a sadhika, sitting at the feet of the Lord while others are sitting on the chair. So, that is how they slowly could approach her. If she came with all her flaming divinity, perhaps people would have just stayed away. So she becomes human. And then, next page, she is told, the same voice of light. If one of theirs they see scale heaven's peaks, men then can hope to learn that Titan climb. God must be born on earth and be as man. That man, being human, may grow even as God. So she showed how to live, how to be. Anybody, even after the whole ashram, she is given charge. She writes letter to her son that, that's 51 or 54, she writes after Sri Aurobindo's physical withdrawal. That, though things are in my name, I hope you understand that they don't belong to me. Everything is Sri Aurobindo's. I know you know it, but just in case. He wants to make sure that there is no illusion. Everything belongs to Sri Aurobindo. At one place she prays, let them worship thee to their heart's content. As for myself, let me remain thy servant. What a beautiful inspiration. She doesn't have to be. Sri Aurobindo himself would be like a child before her. There are so many beautiful experiences which she shares. Yet she says, I want to be just your servant. Let them worship thee to their heart's content. Unlike us who would want to be worshipped and sit by the side of Sri Aurobindo. This is human stupidity. But she comes and shows us the way how to be before the Lord and the Master. And people who couldn't understand this Leela felt that she is a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. Letters that, we believe that she is a disciple. And Sri Aurobindo writes a letter, the mother is not a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. She has had the same experiences and realizations as I have had. And then he goes on to say that, in fact, I entered into the supermind through the back door, whereas she entered through the front door. Then someone asked him, what is her role in your sadhana? He says that what would have taken me 10 years took place within a few months after the mother's coming. That is her contribution to my sadhana. Look at Sri Aurobindo, my sadhana. Without her, I would have been able to help myself but not help others. And yet what would the mother says? Let me remain just thy servant, O Lord. She is showing the way to us. So, this is the command. And then on the next page, we had stopped with these marvelous lines. So, we'll stop there and then continue further. Consent to be nothing and none. Dissolve time's work. Cast off thy mind. Step back from form and name. Annul thyself that only God may be. She is asked to completely efface, and this was the great quality which Sri Aurobindo says that he admired about Mother. This ability to completely efface the past. We live for many years, say in Pondicherry, and still we remember when somebody from the village comes, we are so happy that at least somebody who can speak my own language. This is the crassness of our state. And the mother, how she forgot everything, just came. And when somebody asked her about her reminiscences, she says, I came to India to meet Sri Aurobindo. I continued to remain in India to be with Sri Aurobindo. And after he has withdrawn, I continue to be here to do his work. That's it. Just Sri Aurobindo. I came to see Sri Aurobindo. I remained here to live with Sri Aurobindo. And I continue to be here to serve Sri Aurobindo. How simple. So she consented to become nothing. Totally. The comforts and a different life altogether. We know how treacherous Pondicherry heat can be. and coming all the way from France and Japan, both countries, climate is so different, people are so different, and she comes and lives here and stays here. And then we start from here. This is where we had stopped. February end, we are on page 538. Thus spoke the mighty and uplifting voice. And Savitri heard. She bowed her head and mused, plunging her deep regard into herself, in her soul's privacy, in the silent night. So what we will see now is the next two steps of the yogic journey. The divine is one, but there are three stases or status on which he manifests himself. The individual, the cosmic, and the transcendent. And we have to discover him on all the three, not levels because they are one, but all the three status of the one reality. It's not enough to discover him within, as some great, medieval mystics and Christian mystics through Christian yoga have done it. It's not enough to discover him as the transcendent, as some Buddhist yogis and Vedantins of old could do it. It's not enough to just know him as the cosmic being. All three must be discovered. And the route is very interesting. Sri Aurobindo speaks of this in other places. But after the individual, not the cosmic, but the transcendent. Then there is the cosmic. Otherwise, there is a risk. It's not mentioned here, the dangers, but one may get lost into the cosmic ignorance. So first, after the individual, she plunges herself into discovery of the absolute, the one who is beyond all creation, oneself, because she is given the command, annul thyself, that only God may be. It is called that, Tao, Parbrahma, call it whatever. That, towards that she turns. And the beauty is again like the discovery of the soul, a whole path is given to us, how to arrive at that. So it's a very interesting journey which we can undertake with Savitri. So what does she does first? The mother says in one of her volumes that for this we have to every day practice meditation. What kind of meditation? She says, observe yourself, but she qualifies there are two kinds of observation. One is an indulgent kind of observation. My thoughts, so nice thoughts. It's not like that. Observe and analyze them, reflecting upon them. Split them bare. See their source, their origin. And slowly you start placing them. This is a path even the Vedic rishis followed. That's how they spoke of these 7 levels of thought. Some of them spoke of 9 levels of thought. It's the one which manifests on different layers. So this kind of an witness exercise, but not an indulgent witness. And we should not also mistake it with Vipassana meditation. Many people pick up one or two things from Sri Aurobindo and immediately say, oh, it's the same thing, Vipassana meditation. Just as recently, in fact, today I saw somebody sending a link that Paramhans Nityananda ji has said that, well, Sri Aurobindo's dream we are fulfilling because by practice of our yoga, people experience the chakras and they experience powers, they can fly in air and levitate and God knows what. So, people can do all kinds of absurdities, but coming from somebody of, his whatever standing, if not stature, it's so absurd. It's best to remain silent on something we don't know. That silence is much more meaningful because when we speak, we only express our ignorance. But whatever it is, you can't stop people. So, people often say, oh, see, here is in Savitri, Vipassana meditation. We will see how it is not Vipassana. To start with, she has discovered her soul within. That's the starter. We don't start Vipassana that way. There is nothing like discovery of the inmost soul in Vipassana meditation. Because there is no soul. If it's derived from Buddhism, there is no individual soul at all. And therefore the great question, what is really liberated? So, but we will not go into this metaphysics. Nevertheless, there is a way of meditation and that's what is being described to us. And it's very interesting. Aloof and standing back, detached and calm. It's an inward standing. A witness of the drama of herself. a student of her own interior scene. Actually, it's so nice. Sri Aurobindo uses half humor sometimes, drama of herself. We make so much drama in life, sometimes about sweet nothings, and we can catch ourselves making a drama and a fuss. I have this problem, that problem, the whole life is, it's like a tragedy being played, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, going on inside us. It's a drama. it, that is bad enough. This is worse. So she is observing this drama. What is drama going on? And she says, mother has a distaste for this kind of drama. She speaks about it. It's a distaste for this kind of drama. There is another drama where you are, presenting some great truth in the form of a play. That's a different drama. But here, drama of herself. A student of her own interior scene. So very often when people ask psychology students, sometimes they come and say, what book should we read, sir, for psychology? So my answer is the book called Life and the book called Yourself. If you can read it, if you can read it well with the true light, actually everything is written there. That famous saint has also said, Bulle Shah, that we have read all kinds of books, but you have not read the book called Yourself. And then he says, you have fought all kinds of wars, but you have not fought your own ego. So this is the real war and this is the real book. So she becomes a student of herself. Perhaps this is what is meant in the truest sense of the word Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya literally means student of oneself. So we are studying myself. Patanjali speaks about it. So whatever good is there, we should take it. And it's a good thing to study oneself. But the mother cautions us not indulgently. And that will come a little later. All she allowed to rise, that chose to stir. Oh no, we missed out few lines. She washed the passion and the toil of life and heard in the crowded thoroughfares of mind the unceasing tread and passage of her thoughts. Thought is a clue given to us. That we can easily observe. It's more difficult to observe feelings or instincts, states of consciousness, sensations. We can observe thoughts. So she becomes an observer of her thoughts. Buddhist meditation also, this is one of the paths to arrive at the shunyam, same transcendent reality. So she becomes a student of her own thoughts. She observes them. But what is the big difficulty? It sounds very simple, but we don't realize that we start judging because we are in the habit of judging. We are judging everything, putting into good and bad and right and wrong and this and that. Of course, in total ignorance, we are judging others. Then we judge ourselves. But in the bargain, what happens? We put a lid on certain things and don't want them to rise in us. But we have to observe them, because if we start judging, we will just not see many things. They will remain shimmering below the surface and explode one day. They cannot remain hidden, because the process of yoga will lay bare everything that is inside us. So here we see, all she allowed to rise, that chose to stir. A word of caution. This is being performed by experts. So when it is said, all she allowed to rise, someone asked Sri Aurobindo, should we allow all kinds of instincts and impulses in us to rise so that we can deal with them? He said, no, that is not the way. First get the light. Anyways, they will rise up. We don't have to bother about it. They will rise up. Observe them. But observe them with a non-judgmental sense. That's very important. All she allowed to rise, that chose to stir. Calling, compelling not, forbidding not. So she is neither wanting something to come up, nor she is forbidding something not to come up. This is the state in which she is neutrality. A sign that one has navigated through this state is that one becomes non-judgmental. Because one sees that everything is there in oneself, Like Kabira says so beautifully, that Bura jo dekhan main chala, mujhse bura na koi. All the world, the entire thing is inside me. We use the word individual nature, but individual nature is only a fragment of the universal nature. The whole universal nature is within oneself. And as long as we are judging, we have not gone through this process. So this process liberates us immediately, because we observe. When we see this is a field, this is nature, not us. calling, compelling not, forbidding not. She left all to the process formed in time and the free initiative of nature's will. Of course, a dangerous process. That's why the soul must step out. Otherwise, if this happens, that's why Sri Aurobindo says in one place in his writings on yoga that ancient scriptures recognize 4 states of nature in which nature can enter when one is engaged in yoga. The moment we break through this magic circle, nature can enter into disarray. So the ancient yogins recognize these 4 states. Jadvat, nature can go into a stone-like stillness. Or it can become unmatvat. It can dance and jump and sing without inhibitions. It's not like, oh, my voice is not good, who is listening, who is not listening. One is in that masti, unmatvat. Or it can become balvat, like a child, baby, who has no care, no shame, no guilt. He is a baby. Or even, Sri Aurobindo says, like a gaul, pishachvat. So these are the dangers. You know how Devra Baba would hit with his leg, and that was regarded as a blessing. Or sometimes if he saw some people, nasty people coming near him, he'll pick up a stone and throw at them. Go away, don't come near. But he was a self-realized man. Mother has spoken about it. And there were some people from ashram who had gone, and they were standing in the long queue. And he sent his disciple, call these people, they have come from Sri Aurobindo ashram. So suddenly they were taken out of the queue. And when they went there, they were so overwhelmed that he has called us just because we belong to Sri Aurobindo ashram. Not because of any qualification. Sometimes we forget what it means to be Sri Aurobindo's disciple. We forget it. And then he tells his disciple, he was not speaking, give them batasha. Batasha was the puffed sweet, sugar candy as prasad. So he said more. So more, they can't hold it. So they are saying bus, but he said no, more. So eventually they got a whole lot of it as prasad, and then he said you can go. Now, but his behavior outwardly, people were very perplexed. That why he is hitting with stone. A realized person should be, well-mannered, well-behaved. If that is the sign of realized man, then all salesmen in all the stores are realized people. But we know they are good salesmen, but they are crooks. Crooks means it's not their fault. They are getting a job to, advertise something which is not true. So there are no external signs, but the signs are within. So she just observes. Thus, following the complex human play, she heard the prompter's voice behind the scenes. Now she is seeing who is prompting this thought, the hidden prompters of her speech. We can look within and see, this is ego. We can take one example. People who just go and say, what X was telling about you? What was he telling about me? Oh, you're such a horrible person. Is it? Now, you see, what has prompted this kind of a speech? The vicious and, perverse joy to disturb harmony. And the fool of the hearer that the person actually believes that X has told this about me. Without confirming, without qualifying, the person says, put a knot inside the heart. X told about this, about me. I'll see. Next time I see X. Now, where is this thought come from? It's a thought of ill will. But what is the cloth it is wearing? Goodwill. Because I am fond of you as a friend, that's why I am cautioning you what X was telling. Look how deceptive the play can be. So she sees the hidden prompter. And fools will say, thank you so much, good you cautioned me. But the wise man will say, stay away from me, don't come near with these thoughts. So this is the hidden prompter. Perceived the original libretto set. Now Sri Aurobindo will use a whole, musical terms. Libretto, the, writing when we play a orchestra. So, that music composition. So there's the libretto. So who has composed this music? This taking the form of speech and thought, but who is the composer originally? If you go, you will see some dark fellow who is just pushing our ego to be in somebody's good books. Very often people do these things to flatter and be in good books. That, see, I am your well-wisher. And behind it is ambition, that if I am in good books, I'll be given a nice place. So if we observe, we will see who is the composer and behind this thought. It's a very interesting discoveries. And the organ theme of the composer's force. So organ theme is satisfy the ego, fulfill your ambition. Mother's organ themes are so beautiful. Marching in search of the soul, mystic solitude, meditation of the spiritual warrior, prayer, concentration, aspiration of the body for the divine. Such beautiful themes she has given. But there are other composers whose themes are satisfy your ego by flattering, fulfill your ambition by talking ill of others. Now this is the organ theme, but we don't see. Mechanically we are just doing this game. So she is seeing this game. All she beheld that surges from man's depths. The animal instincts prowling mid life's trees. That's why, because Shobinda has seen all this, so he would caution. Look, you don't know. There is an animal waiting behind. So you are trying to catch the fruit and he is trying to catch you. So if you are lucky, you may get the fruit. But if you are unlucky, most of the time the animal will leap at you because you are not vigilant. And this animal will eat you with the apple in your hand. So be careful. So animal instinct, she observed that how they are hidden behind the trees. The impulses that whisper to the heart. And passion's thunder chase, sweeping the nerves. We know how passion overtakes us. We are maddened with the sweet poison wine of passion. It's like a storm, and it just rushes through the nerves. One feels compelled. One feels one is driven by it. One becomes passion. So she observes how passion rises. And this is, by the way, one of the simple remedies also. When the storm comes, not to pay attention to it, to turn the mind elsewhere, or just observe it without yielding to it. So these are ways by which we can, just 3-4 lines, then we will just take a pause. She saw the powers that stare from the abyss, waiting for their turn. Okay, now you have done your job, ambition. Now who will go? Greed. So greed will come up. After greed has gone, done her job, then greed comes back. And then who will go? Well, lust for money. Okay, goes. And then the person is dragged into the abyss. These are powers of the abyss. Mother has said these 3 things. Lust for power, greed for money. This is the abyss. So it just drags us down and down. She saw the powers that stare from the abyss and the wordless light that liberates the soul. She also sees that light which comes from above to help us, to aid us, which shows us that, look, this is something which you have to keep away and stay away from. So we'll stop here, 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and continue. So just one small announcement before we break off. On 22nd, there is a special session, the last concluding session in Savitri Bhavan from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. to be precise.